What's up, YouTube? I am cautionfun here with a deck spotlight video on an oldie but a goodie, Leyhoard Hatchling Magic. So the core set refresh is finally live, and it brought with it a whole host of new archetypes and deck lists, and just so happened to breathe some new life into some old favorites, amongst them Leyhoard Hatchling Magic. This is one of the first archetypes I fell in love with back when Leyhoards used to cost 10 mana and deal 6 damage apiece. But alas, the balance team decided, rightfully so, that they were a bit OP, and they tuned it down to its current 4 damage roar effect. Then the archetype ceased to exist until now. It has a recent mana cost reduction with the core set refresh being implemented there, coupled with its stat change from a paltry 2-1 to a much more useful 3-3 body. Leyhoard Hatchling, I think, is super viable once again. And because the decks that I built out are comprised entirely of cards that were available pre-core set refresh, you can use it right now to grind out those wins on the ladder and hopefully get yourself some new core cards to build out your collection. So I've tried out a couple of lists that are very focused on Leyhoard Hatchling in the 4.5, 5 hours the core set refresh has been live so far. So let's go through 2 of my favorites, and we can talk about some of the combos within the deck. We can talk about how some of the cards synergize with each other, and we can take a look at some gameplay footage I recorded earlier tonight so we can see the deck in action. All right. So again, as the name would suggest, the deck revolves around Leyhoard Hatchling. Now, don't be alarmed by the 8 mana casting cost, because, as you can see, it gets 1 mana cheaper for each card we have in our hand at the start of each turn. So ideally, the turn flips back to you. You want 8 or 9 cards in your hand, which would reduce the cost of your hatchlings to 0. And that's when we can really start to do some fun stuff here. So again, step 1 is to find your stuff and fill your hand, which is why we include a ton of draw engines. This deck has just about all of them. We have Palace's Wand, we have Vortimer the Volatile, we have the 2 All-Seeing Spires, and we have 2 Rune Viper Tinctures down here, just straight draw 3 cards for 5 mana. So it should be relatively easy to draw out your whole deck, which is indeed the goal. Again, step 1 is to find your stuff and fill your hand and reduce the cost of your hatchlings to 0. Alongside our draw engines, we have some other ways to keep our hand full, with some value generators like Demetrios, whose final drafts result in even more card draw. We also have the Miraculous Familiars to generate random spells and fill up our hand. We also have Corralis Rune Moth, also recently buffed from a 1-1 to a 1-3, much stickier now, and generating free runes. Never hurt anybody there. So once we've drawn our cards and we've generated some value and we've reduced the cost of our hatchlings to 0, we can transition to step 2 of the process, which is getting our opponent's health to 0. So to facilitate, we have 2 cards that essentially function as 4 extra Leyhoard hatchlings in Clone and Portal Wrangler, both 2 ofs there. So Clone's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. As soon as Leyhoard is the cheapest creature in your hand, you should play Clone. Just because, eventually they'll cost 0, and the more the merrier at that point. And once they do cost 0, you can pair them with Portal Wrangler there. Playing one alongside a Portal Wrangler brings you another one. So you end up with 2x4 burst damage from hand, and you play 2 3/3s and a 3/4 body for as little as 4 mana if the hatchlings are free. So we have our 2 organic hatchlings. We have the 2 generated by Portal Wrangler, and we have the 2 generated by Clone, which gives us a total of 6, which, 6 times 24, or 6 times 4 rather, is 24 damage there. If that's not enough, we also have 2 Worm Breaths to do an additional 12, brings our total to 36, which is more than 30. So there's enough damage in the deck without accounting for any of your creatures attacking or any of your peripheral burst, like your God Power, your Final Drafts, or even Cersei down here. Again, everything in this deck is more or less there to facilitate the primary win condition, which again is Leyhoard Hatchling shenanigans. That said, I also chose to include a Deuteria Mana Shard Mage. You draw your deck so quickly, and honestly, the biggest issues I ran into with this deck were hand size issues, where I had too many draw engines and not enough hand space. So having a cheap card that keeps coming back and doesn't get harder to play, but gets better as you draw through your deck and as the game progresses, that's not a bad thing on its own, and more of a nice to have. But in addition to that, all of the previous combos that I went over there with Leyhoard Hatchlings and Portal Wranglers and Clones, those same interactions apply equally well to the latter stages of Deuteria. Once you get Deuteria to a 1-mana 5/5, you can play 2 of them alongside a Portal Wrangler body for 6 mana. Put 2 1-mana 7/7s in your deck. You can clone the 7/7s when they come through. So, if you find yourself in a game where you're forced to use your Leyhoard Hatchlings and your Worm Breaths as creature removal, you can always fall back on the alternative win con in Deuteria's later stages there. This is the first iteration of the deck that I wanted to show you guys. Let me move on to another iteration there, and I can explain some of my reasoning for some of the changes I made. Okay, so as you can see, this list is more or less the same. The only notable changes, we took out both of these Miraculous Familiars and replaced them with Soothsayers. Miraculous Familiar is a fantastic card, like there's no two ways about it. Generates value in hand, which is what we want. It has Blessed, it's all great. But the reason I wanted to try out Soothsayer was, it allows you to foresee so much that allows you to weed through your deck, relatively early in the game. With the first list, I found myself maintaining a big hand relatively easily, which is obviously the goal, but they weren't always the specific cards I needed for, that specific matchup. So Soothsayer allows me to reach into my deck and pick out the pieces I need for any given game, and I think it just helps the deck be a little more consistent, replacing itself with a card you chose to include in your deck versus a randomly generated spell like you would have gotten from Familiar. It also provides us with 2 new sources of organic card draw that we didn't have before, which made me feel a little bit more comfortable with dropping one of the Rune Viper Tinctures, because it is a 5-mana spell that gets you 0 tempo. So dropping one, I wasn't too upset about it, especially like I said with the Soothsayer there in place of, and that allowed me to slot in 1 Metamorphosis, which also saw a big update with the core set refresh. Used to cost 2 mana, now it costs 1, and before it would transform a creature into a random creature that cost 1 more mana. Now you get to delve the creature that it transforms into. That's just an insanely good card, on its own, taking all those things into consideration. That said, it's most effective when you're using it on an understated creature, or on a creature with a negative afterlife effect, or maybe a properly statted creature that's already made some value trades. The most notable one for me is Pyramid Warden. Being able to play Metamorphosis on an injured Pyramid Warden, moving up to a 3-mana creature that you delve, more often than not, you're going to upgrade the body from, a 2/2 or a 2/3 or whatever it is. And then on top of that, you're denying your opponent something back from their void, because transformed things, they don't proc afterlife effects. So that's one way to take advantage of the Metamorphosis. Another way, like I said, understated creatures, most notably roar creatures, including the one we just added 2 of into the deck in Soothsayer. Soothsayer's primary function is force E3, draw a card. Once it's there, that 2/3 body isn't all that important. So for 1 more mana, being able to upgrade it to like a 5/5 on average, 5 stats for 1 mana, that can be pretty strong. And the mother of all metamorphoses is sticking it on Cersei. Just imagine playing a Cersei, doing all this stuff. You deal 3 to your enemy's whole board, you force C3, and then you spend 1 more mana and you turn this 3/3 body into a Helion Elite. That's the holy grail. That scenario alone is enticing enough for me to want to include Metamorphosis as a one of. I certainly don't think it's 100% necessary to the success of the deck, but it does provide for some fun interactions and can be a plus value play, at least in my brief experience here. Clearly there's some room to maneuver within this Leyhoard Hatchling Magic archetype. I'm 100% sure both of these lists can be further optimized, but hopefully it can provide you with a decent enough place to start. If you did find this video helpful, fun, informative, whatever you may think, please consider leaving a like. That really does help us out over here. And don't forget to smash that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future videos. If you have any ideas for this particular deck, please feel free to leave a suggestion in the comments section there. Feel free to reach out to me on Discord, whatever you're comfortable with. If not, let me know what new cards or decks you're most excited to try out now that the core set refresh is here. Oh man, I'm so excited to get back to playing. If you want some help putting together a list of your own there, feel free to hop into the TST Discord. I'll be sure to put a link in the description below. You can ask any of us for help. We have a wonderful community. We'll have that invite link in the description, so certainly hope to see you guys in there. Good luck on the ladder. Good luck cracking those new core packs. And until next time, guys, please take it easy.